Guest today is Dick Fallow. Dick Fallow is retired from the AFL-CIO for many years now, and he is with volunteers for the Quad City Federation of Labor, and is a well-known, widely known, I should say, activist, not only on the labor front, but also with many other issues that come up in the community here in the Quad City area.
With the union movement, I spent some time being what they called an inside organizer, going into plants and helping out if possible to organize the workers there. And then I was with the United Electrical Radio and Machine Workers here in the Quad Cities for several years, doing various things, assisting in strikes, certain publicity things, putting out leaflets. I even had one time when it was necessary to put on a television show, and I had to do that during one of the activities in town here. After a while, I became a member of the International Association of Machinists as a business representative, and here in the Quad Cities and surrounding territory, and spent several years there negotiating contracts, handling arbitration, assisting locals with the grievances and the normal things, and also engaging in political action. In 1967, I joined the National AFL-CIO as an area director of their Committee on Political Education. And I was an area director in 3 states of Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. That involved working with central bodies, local unions, state federations, and things of that sort in bringing issues to the membership and also assisting in any way possible in mobilizing voter registration things and getting out the vote and just making, doing our
About what year was that?
Friends.
About what year was that?
Well, that was from 1967 until 1988. Yeah, so that was about 20 years there. Sometimes you'd be working on a congressional district campaign. Sometimes it might be an important city one, or a special election for a state legislative position. That there were a variety of scenarios on there, and then as I said earlier, when I retired, started assisting as a volunteer and a delegate to the Quad City Federation of Labor, and locally trying to help out in any way possible.
And during those years, there was a lot of other things going on in the country, such as the civil rights movement was building up. And what sort of role did you play in that?
Well, back as I remember, Vince, we joined and worked with certain church groups and some other community groups in the 60s, 1960s, on the civil rights thing as a result, of the national movement. And here we had some local activities, and one of the things, and the Federation, the Quad City Federation of Labor at that time, was really, outspoken in this matter of fair housing. And you can't believe you can believe some of the resistance and some of the things that, some of the challenges that arose because of that. But it was a lot of good people working together, and I think some of it, bore fruit. And Yeah, the civil rights, of course, that in the union movement, we learned long ago that it's very important to have everybody working together regardless of anything else, race, creed, color, religion, nationality, you name it. We try to unite people around common issues of interest to working families, and a lot of people try to do just the opposite in order to weaken the labor movement. It's that simple.
And where was the resistance from to?
Well, it's sort of a cloudy, it sort of lurks in the background, and in some places in this country, of course, it was encouraged by the employers. They used the race card, for example, to split workers, and as a result, it sometimes defeated attempts, for example, to organize or to maintain your, unity during a strike or things of that sort. It was used as a weapon to beat down the working people, all of them. During World War I, people's rights, to speak out
Mm-hmm.
were abridged. They were muzzled. And you either went along or they'd throw you in jail or whatever. And around town here, of course, we had, and this is what I just heard from other people, we had a very, bad scene of people harassing people from, German origin. And I mean, they, rough stuff and so forth to vent their spleen at, and emotions and against many of the German people here. Very sad thing, and you see this happening in other instances too.
Right. And so by the time World War
Yeah.
II, most
Well, then we had the Japanese,
right.
on the West Coast, and we also had Italians and Germans put in jail. I didn't know that until recently, but for just being Italian, German, or Japanese. And it was fear, you see, that was driving this thing, and it was a sad thing. Too, you may recall, they had a so-called wage freeze and price freeze. Well, corporations were getting cost plus, so they were not too badly affected by government rules, but working people were, and they did get a few benefits in such things as health care and pensions and so forth, since wages were frozen. And then, talk about the rights. After World War II, and groundwork had been laid beforehand, Congress passed the Taft-Hartley Act, which required, loyalty oaths and so forth. It also took away from workers the right to have a say in how their pension funds should be invested and so forth and so on. There were some other hookers there too that did not, come out. It was all being done as the hysteria of anti-communist hysteria was promoted and swept through the country. And there again, you had teachers. They had to sign a loyalty oath. They were one of the first to be singled out. And of course, union officials also had to sign affidavits that they were not communists and so forth and so on. And of course, the rest is history. For a while there, this hysteria did discourage any kind of criticism or dialogue of how different issues should be viewed and so forth. And it was a very harmful thing. It had a bad effect on the labor movement and so forth. And at the same time, this is very interesting, in Japan, they were using the underworld gangsters actually to terrorize the Japanese independent labor movement, so that and it succeeded in converting the independent labor movement into a company-dominated labor movement. This is what happened in Japan. The same time they were trying, there were difficulties with this issue of communism and so forth in this country, and the same thing was going on in Japan and worldwide. So you often wonder what was going on there. Local company here that was waving the flag and criticizing their employees for going on strike for a nickel an hour and calling them, Reds, and unpatriotic and so forth and so on. This is in the period right after World War II. And here you had, a labor movement that came out of the war. Their wages had been frozen. Now they were at liberty to fight for, sort of to catch up and so forth. And there were several strikes across the country. And I think this is why, the Taft-Hartley Act must have been because the employers were scared. And they had, Republicans were in control at this time. Truman, I believe, was the president. He vetoed it, but they overrode his veto. And they were the ones that put this saddle on the back of the working people. This round table, which is a kind of a meeting, a regular meeting of all the major big conglomerates, got together and decided they were going to promote a union-free environment. Whoa! What this would do, and did, was to, as a result, they got these lawyers, to drag things out. They discouraged and fought viciously against a new organization of working people. And as a result, in the period from 1970 until 2000, while productivity soared, while the people, 1 to 5% of the top income people made out like bandits, working people found a reduction in their income. They're putting out more work, but getting less for it. And this was because corporations decided they wanted to weaken the union movement again. Mm-hmm. And the union movement is probably one of the strongest, most effective organizations to fight for not only economic justice, but social justice. So many things, housing and the environment and the whole slug of things that the union movement is concerned with, because our people, yes, they spend time working, hopefully, decent environment and decent treatment, the right to participate in various affairs and so forth, and the fight goes on.
Sometimes people seem to feel that the unions are not being vocal enough in social issues. Is that, would you say that was a correct viewpoint? Or
there was a period when maybe this was true, and the focus was on the economics, if you will. But anymore, I think you're finding that this has changed considerably, and some of the social issues, like, well, for example, right now, the clock has been ticking for 5 years on this, welfare to work thing, which has been a disaster for the people at the bottom of the heap. And now that program is set to self-destruct. Well, these people who fashioned this program must have been living in dream world, because they ignored completely the fact that there would be a downturn in the economy, which we are now seeing. People, being laid off by the hundreds of thousands, and you just can't tell somebody to get off welfare and go to work when there's thousands of people looking for jobs. It's a disaster, and I think they're going to have to revisit that. And frankly, as far as social issues are concerned, with all the wealth in this country, and we're one of the few industrial areas that probably doesn't take this into account, we should have, you know, a national health care system. We should have daycare provided, you know, for people who want to park their children somewhere that's, you know, they're going to get good attention. And so many other things. Housing. You know, you look around and yes, houses are being built, but they're in the 300 to 500,000 range. That means people who don't have that kind of money
Right.
are going to have to pay a lot more for rent. So these are some of the social issues. My Lord, the labor is concerned about that the minimum wage has not kept pace. If it had, we would probably have a minimum wage today of about $15. But no, they kind of let it sleep there for a while and did not raise it in line with the cost of living. So the living wage program, which has swept the country, we're involved in that. In my opinion, we should have absolutely a minimum guarantee to people, regardless of anything else, of economic income, not to subsidize laziness or anything like that, but to make sure that people's basic fundamental needs are going to be met. And it's disturbing.
This seems like a radical idea here, but
I don't think it's radical.
and in many of the European countries, some of these issues have been dealt with.
Well, of
or
course.
this,
We're so far behind other, you know, industrialized countries. It's not funny. Healthcare is, of course, one, you know, one of the most glaring examples, and that's been a source of a lot of friction between workers and corporations as to who's going to pay this constantly increasing rate, you know, for health care. The thing is in a self-destruct mode at this point. And you have newspapers like the Des Moines Register just saying, hey, something's got to give here, and the answer probably is a national health care program of some sort. Something with cost controls and all.
resurgence in these issues, particularly at a time like what we're experiencing now, since 9/11.
9/11, which accelerated some of the economic problems, but I don't know. Fighting for full employment. Why? Whatever happened to the shorter work week? This would be something to consider, in terms not of sharing the poverty, but of sharing the wealth more. Of a minimum wage that's going to get people above the poverty level, for goodness sakes. These are some things that we should be fighting for and are fighting for. And this country would benefit by it entirely. There's another thing, too. More and more we're finding that people, the public in general, is not being informed by the media about the critical issues that are going on. There's a wall of silence, and in its place we get trivial junk, or things that just don't matter, feel-good stuff that's fed to the public. And I mean to tell you, the commercials are becoming more interesting than some of the other stuff being offered by the media. But they have flunked the test, and they flunked their responsibility of informing people about what's really going on in this country and in the world. And there are reasons for that probably, but it's too bad, because you have to then take and do things, alternate things, to find out first of all what's going on, and then to hopefully spread the information around so that the public gets it. Right now, it's sad. It's really sad, and people know something's wrong, though. And they react to this business of all these layoffs and so forth that have been taking place And the trade, that's another thing. This fast track, and we've fought that, we fought NAFTA because we found that it not only depletes jobs and takes jobs from here, but in other places like Canada and Mexico, the worker have fallen behind in the period of NAFTA. They have not benefited. The ones who have benefited in both those countries are the same ones that are benefiting here from cheap labor and, you know, ignoring environmental concerns and all that stuff. Is the same top 1 to 5% of the very wealthy. They're the only ones that are coming out of it. By fiat, I guess it is, or just by declaration. I think the President and Ashcroft have modified or tried to modify the Constitution, and some people think, well, that applies only to non-citizens. Well, if you look at it, some lawyers are telling us that it is so loosely constructed that it could apply to anybody. And any time you take away from any group, regardless of any other conditions, their right to habeas corpus, their right to speak out, you know, and maybe it's, you don't agree with it, that's fine, and you have a dialogue. That's what, it's only through dialogue that you come up with the best ideas. And anytime you chill that, under the guise of crisis or fear or whatever,
well, admittedly,
it's worrisome.
Admittedly, we have a crisis, and since 9/11, the president and I think members of Congress feel we should be on a war footing, and though we've not officially declared war against anybody.
Well, I think Congress should not abdicate its responsibility. Number one, to declare war, and anything doing with the Constitution. If you want to change the Constitution, there's a provision for doing that, and spelled out, and it was never perfect to begin with, and we, you know, back in 1776 in that era, in extending the benefits of the Constitution, you know, and so forth, and anything that goes in the other direction is just taking us back to a bad situation. And no, I think Congress should really have stood up, and unfortunately it did not. And that's, you know, I understand they think that why stop and why stand in front of an express train, but, you know, sometimes it was only one woman who stood up, a woman named Congresswoman Lee, as I remember her name.
From California.
And, she just didn't want to, you know, toss out or abdicate their responsibilities. Same with fast track. If there's going to be trade, it's Congress's responsibility not to delegate it, but to discuss it so that the people, through their people in Congress, their representatives in Congress, can have input, you know, but to hand it over, I don't know, they're not doing their job if this is what, you know, takes place. You just don't abdicate your responsibilities.
When I came in to interview you, you were playing some music. And what sort of music do you play?
What sort of music do I play?
Yes.
Oh, it's, I'm in a time warp there. Music from the 20s, 30s, and 40s. And popular music, stuff I grew up with, you know. And actually, I play the accordion.
Oh, you do?
The piano, I just kind of goof around on. But it's easier to play it, you know, get to a piano than it is to strap yourself into an accordion. So, and
when did you start?
I'll play, you know, Union songs and heavens, even stuff from the 1800s. There's some beautiful music there, you know.
Right.
And,
so when did you start playing the accordion?
Oh, I started playing that in 1936, I think. Yeah. And it's a hobby, you know, and I like it, and it's fun.
And you play with other people?
Yes, mainly in the family. I have some nephews who are, one of them played at some, he's good, played at some place in Georgetown. It's supposed to, something alley. It's supposed to be one of the best jazz venues. And he's good on the bass. And then one of my nephews is great on guitar. So when we get together, why, you know, we do
jam
it that
set.
way.
And you also do a lot of reading.
For the library system. I got this, it's called Three Strikes. It's very interesting. It just came out, and it's by three authors, and it deals with three different strikes. The Ludlow strike back around 1913. Then in Detroit in the 36 or 7, 1936 or 7, the women who were employed by Woolworths had a sit-in. And won, the bargaining rights and certain demands, certain changes and improvements they wanted, because they had to stand up all day, 9 hours a day. That hurts the legs. And then the other one has to do with the problems faced by musicians union, and in light of the introduction of technological changes, where today, you have a electronic piano and all sorts of bells and whistles, and it can replace a lot of performers. I didn't realize at one time the theaters would hire bands of 15 people, to play. That was during the silent. Then of course came sound, and somebody figured out how to put sound on film, and so therefore a lot of musician jobs were lost in various, mainly the bigger cities, And so these are some of the problems too. And same in a factory, or same in an office. This is what's happening with the advent of many technological changes. Those who own the technology are the ones that call the shots, and that's the corporations. And so what do we have? A lot of offices, people are doing work in the Cayman Islands somewhere, and on the computers, and feeding it here. It's just something else, and this is what leads to what they call productivity increases, which they do not share with the public. They hog it all to themselves, the owners. And you see that, and we saw that when you have a drill press. You had a drill press operator, and then they introduced a computer that would run that thing, and so they, whoopee, there goes somebody. And technology has provided some new jobs, but it's also wiped out a lot more, and I don't know what the balance is on that anymore, but this is a real challenge.
And what do you think can be done to sort of balance it out? What happens? Do the people who are laid off these jobs, they should learn some new skills?
Well,
what sort
right now they're they fend for themselves, and that's rather a horrible, gut-wrenching situation to find yourself in, especially if you're 40 or older, or whatever the situation might be, or if you're a woman. A lot of women are getting laid off here who are the sole support, and of their children, and they don't have any cushion of savings to fall back upon. And
well, some people,
I think, I don't know, Vince, let me put it this way. I compare it to the rural electrification program. Back in the 30s, the rural area was not serviced by the privately owned utility companies, right? So the government under Roosevelt had to step in, and that developed the rural electrification program. and they even got into generating facilities and so forth. But sometimes the government has got to do for people what they can't do for themselves. This is not a unique thought. And it may be that a shorter work week is one answer. It may be that the government has to step in and provide jobs. They did it in the 30s. And let me tell you, it saved a lot of companies bacon because it put people to work. And if private industry can't do it, if the private system cannot do it, what are people supposed to do? Drop dead? You know?
Well, we'd like to continue this conversation with you, but for our program, we're just about running out of time, and I want to thank Dick Fallow for being on the program of Community Views and News, and we definitely will be continuing this conversation and have Dick on again the program in the near future.